For a long time in the bus, I've had this setup coming off of the positive terminal of the battery. Now, what you're seeing here is the clip on top for my plug-in charger, and the cable going left goes to the other batteries because my two battery banks are in parallel, series with each other, and then parallel. And then the important two cables are the ones that you see kind of hanging down here. The one going left that's a bit oranger is the one going to the solar charge controller, and the one going to the right is going to the devices that powers basically the whole the house. One other small wire to notice, this other very small red wire, this goes to my shunt reader. Now, currently I don't have an easy way to disconnect those, the solar charge controller, the house devices, and the shunt reader. And so what I'm doing today is adding a couple of 60 amp fuse switches that can be used to turn those off. You see, because when I travel outside the bus, like if I'm leaving the bus for a month or more, I don't actually have a way to stop the very slow trickle of the solar charge controller and the shunt reader. And additionally, in the case of an emergency, if there were a fire in the bus, it's possible that one of the first things I'd want to do is come down here and turn off all power to the bus. Now, I do have an emergency setup, which I've shown in another video, that is inside the bus that shuts off power to the main breaker. But if there were, a ground, or if there were some kind of a bad situation happening between here and there in these 5-6 feet, there's nothing I can easily do about that right now. So I'm going to add a switch that will allow me to do that. And then, when I store the bus, I will be able to simply press both of these shutoffs, and then I'll know that the batteries are just totally isolated and kind of ready to sit for a little while. As usual, with most This Is the Bus projects, I'm using welding cable, which, it's more expensive, but I really like it. It's flexible and can tolerate a lot of heat, and there's just something about it. I like the way it feels running either through my conduits or along the walls. And I've got some really high welding cable there that I use for the solar charge controller. And this stuff is like a marine. And this is my... I have used this hammer crimper to crimp an incredible number of ends of these cables. I have gotten, I don't know how many hundreds, maybe even thousands in terms of how many service dollars this would have cost. Dollars out of this little guy. Definitely recommend having one of these anytime you're doing a project like this. And so I've got my cables ready. They're all crimped up. One of them is going to go, they're both going to connect to the battery bank, and one of them, and then both connect to these two circuit breakers, and one is going to go to the house, and one of them is going to go to the solar charge controller. So here we go. Alright, as you can now see, I've got my two crimped cables connected to the two breakers, and got them labeled, house and solar, and I've got it mounted on just a piece of laminate wood flooring. If you do some flooring in your bus and you have extra, this stuff is, I kind of use it for everything, although I know, it's a very hard wood, so some people don't like to use it. The thing about it is it's so hard, you do have to pre-drill every hole first, but, it looks nice, and it's quite insulative, of course, and, it's kind of, you end up with a lot of it around, so I think it's good to put it to use. And so now we'll do the rest of the connections and mount it in the battery box. And there is the new completed breaker panel. So I've got two 60 amp breakers, one going to the house, one coming from the solar charge controller, and now I have nice isolation for my battery bank. So you can see there's nothing coming out of the positive this side. Well, the red clip there is just the charge controller, because I'm my shore power charger, because I am on shore power this second while I work on it. And then over here we've got no connections other than through those breakers. So shut off those two breakers, and the batteries are totally isolated.